And it's also that thing too with when it comes to animusy stuff, because you said you're masculine, like becoming conscious of what's your masculine, and it's also because the way that the archetypal work goes on is that we first, to find your true animus, we first have to differentiate from the autonomous aspect of the animus. So
Mm,
it's a two-pronged thing where you differentiate and withdraw because that's the where the possession happens. It's like it's in you, you don't know that it's like ruling your thinking. And then when it gets constellated, it's that shows up as the mirror through the dark energy or whatever.
yeah.
But part of that individuation work, you have to detangle yourself from what that is, and that's where you get a bit more conscious of, okay, what is that when it gets me, and how does it rule my thinking? And is it negative attitudes about myself? Do I get a feeling or a mood? And do I want to then go and watch true crime documentaries? Because that's kind of like pedophiles, and because that's almost a way in which this gets, it sort of it feeds it, but it's
Yeah.
a dynamic that gets kind of thrown out. And that's the genius of the work is when we know that, okay, this is an autonomous archetype. It's not me. That's where you can first get the power back because then at least in the moment, even if it's taking over you and you can see it's like occupying your psychic space, you can at least know that it's not you. And that's like where it starts to, you can start to detangle it. So it's that
Mm,
sort of detangling and then letting it shrink off, and that everyone has their own way in which we begin to combat. Because then this is where it becomes battling our own demons. It's sort of discern, differentiate, this isn't me. And then you've got to start, when you've differentiated enough, you bring in the contra force or that thing which is the curative solution. So maybe like for a lot of animus stuff, it feeds off of the feminine energy that's not being occupied, and that's where you get this the vampire demon lover thing.
mm,
And so that's why also the negative animus ties in with always a negative mother problem, because a negative feminine problem will mean that the feminine isn't, it's not in the woman, she's not like in it as her home base, and then whenever that's going on it means that there's a pocket of energy that's
mm.
stuck in the psyche, and then the animus is like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna. So they're sort of like they're kind of like that, and they glob together. And so when we go into individuation, it's often a two-pronged thing where you detangle from the animus, and then okay, then what's my feminine problem? And it sort of chinks away at it like this. I did have a dream. Well, no, early in analysis, I had a lot of the Mercurius demons show up as the twins, which is the split animus. So, and they'd be the evil twins that were like coming to fuck with me or do something. And then as they was evolving, there were these two teenage boys, and they were all black and gothic and dark eyeliner, and they were trying to encage me or something. But then I found out in the dream, I didn't see her, but that they were working for a big female evil boss. And so then it's like I didn't see her, but then it's like okay, because that's what it's. So the deeper angle is that negative feminine, and when she's the negative feminine's always persecutory. It's deeper. Masculine
Mhm.
is like you suck, you're terrible. It comes from up high. It's a condemning down. This is valueless. What you do is not important. Um, there's no point to this. And the feminine, she's much more. It just comes from a deeper place. I don't know how else to describe it. It's lower down. It's like there's no point to your existence. You'll never like you're a terrible person. Shaming, persecutory, reputation destroying. You see that with the Amber Heard thing, the negative feminine, right? It's like no one will ever believe you. You are the one who were terrible to me. And
Oh,
that's that seed of the feminine. It's a more manipulating energy. You think no wonder these serial killer men become that way when you look at what their mothers were like. So it's the evil mother that produces the psychotic masculine. So
yeah.
that's actually how that gets constellated because you can see that as an exaggerated example. Okay, so that's the two prongs. So we discern, differentiate, and then we work out what the solution is. And it's one of two things usually, which is somehow getting more into the feminine ground, which is that This is my joy, my flow, my being, the innocence of my eros, my dancing, my folding the washing, and finding that to be a blissful, mundane experience. Because that's another way the animus comes in, is like, oh, that's how it happened for me in my postpartum. I was doing all the mundane things because that's what it's like when you're a mother. It's like, holy shit, like you don't even have time for yourself at all in that first little period. It's eat, sleep, change baby, wash diapers. And then that's where he came in. It's like, none of this is important. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. This is hell. This sucks. And I thought that's what I felt, that this is my belief. But
Yeah.
it's a condemning of the ground that the animus does. So, okay, finding the joy, and then the other side of it is becoming conscious of, let's say, the true animus and putting him in his place where he should be, which is doing the creative work. Because that's the other thing too. If you think if he's doing trickster stuff with his mind, dark magician, he should be being the white magician and actually making something important and relating to you as your inner soul and bringing that into being. And
Hmm.
especially with Sagittarius Gemini axis. Because in a way, Cancer Capricorn is almost this man. I call it the magic axis because it has to do with manifestation and like going into the ground in Cancer and then crystallizing the mountain and this. But Gemini Sagittarius, which is sits just before those two, that is it's so elemental, which is what I was talking about in the reading. And it's all of that which gathers the forces. And this is why it's such a difficult access and why the mutable signs are so difficult generally, and why we find as mutable people are that much more susceptible to possessions. And as you notice, you're like getting possession, you're like, this is psychotic. And then you go, okay, well, we see a lot of serial killers on the mutable signs because then you see it's the same thing because they're responding to and reactive to all of these different forces.
Hmm.
But they're just blind in it, and so then they can. I've seen. I had a Sagittarian boyfriend, his eyes went black. And the thing is, when these things are unconscious and when we aren't differentiated from them, at least in part, we do bring in these relations or reflections, whether it's the romantic partner, which is often the strong one, but it can show up in work situations or whatever. It depends on how what's moving. We bring them in. So they do constellate. They get constellated with a person that is the most ultimate hook for the projection. And then we can have there a lot of astral stuff too, because you're already psychically enmeshed as a way for the unconscious it's trying to get itself back to itself, but it's sort of just globbed together and there's all of this noise. And so, the simple thing I always come back to is when it comes to actually dealing with the practical side of whether or not how do I relate to the XYZ person or situation, it just comes back to is there love here? And is there actually a place of genuine meeting and evolution? And is there a foundation of trust there or something like that? And if the answer is no, just to withdraw, and especially again in the early phases where differentiation hasn't taken place properly, we do need to be able to know, okay, if this is someone who's constellating that in me through their pathology, I have to really withdraw that because the moment I go in and feed that, it's like feeding that part of my own constellation again. And that's also why we get driven back or why they pop into our head or why it's like, oh, and there's such a seduction in it. But that's where the idea of the soul or the principle of love is so important, or the God principle or the Christ principle, because it's the plutonic energy of, okay, no, I must obey the truth of love and withdraw my energies from that astral plane and where all of that's meeting. And we do that enough to create the safety where we can allow the light to grow and be nourished, and that to be the foundation of where our movements come from. And we can still have the psychological problems, but becomes a lot better, safer, healthier when we have the foundation of light, and then we're able to then start getting much more into the core of the work, which is where you start really doing the differentiation work and you really become conscious of who is he in my day to day, in my dreams when he shows up. And it's at least here and it's you choosing to relate to yourself and your own energy at that
Yeah.
point. So yeah, so you think about if you take these men, you go, what's good about you, you label you go, what do I like about this person? Dirt, 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 and then what's the problem of that person? Dirt, dirt, dirt. And then you see the negative parts, that's the constellated negative side of the animus. But the positive parts, that's actually the key to your own animus in terms of the positive qualities. And that's the
Yeah.
trick. So when I take, the big twin flame guy that I had who was Sagittarius and then Gemini rising, so we had all the same
Mm.
angles. He was dynamic, quick, just funny,
Mhm.
clever, and so fast and so sharp, and all of this copious amounts of talent, creative potential, deeply creative potential. Like it seemed like he should have been a superstar for one of the other 10 things that he was freaking masterful at. But then he couldn't take responsibility for anything in his life. He self-sabotaged every potential success. He had run away from any kind of responsibility and da, da, da. So it's like all of the different things. And
Mhm.
it's like, and so that then you go, oh, I loved him for what he could have been, but that what he could have been or what he should have been if he wasn't fucked up. Those are my qualities, actually.
Mm.
That's telling me something about my own creative potential. And so, okay, I am this way. I am this way. And then you want to differentiate from all the negative sides because when he does get tangled up and he's unrelated, which is what the animus does in its negative, it cuts off relationships and then it fragments and then it's all heady or it's all negative attitude towards the self or it takes you out of your own feminine ground of being. So you've got to discern, differentiate, but it's yeah, it's taking those as seeing that that's the mirror to your own creative potential, but to then uh, and that's where we have to
Yeah.
bring on the, let's say, the fixed cross energies, which are the stabilizing forces, particularly for the mutable cross energies. So then we get more dedicated and we get more devoted and we get more single pointed, which is the evolved theme of Sagittarius, of course, because then we start,
Yeah.
we always have to still those forces and then go, what is my true center? Or can I access that intuition? Where do I really want to go? If I'm not getting pulled in all these different directions with these things that I could be doing or where I kind of enjoy this or that or however it shows up, just scattered mind and we have to get focused.